Sorry, we had no sound. So, well, good morning. I had my mic looked like it was on mute for some reason. So I'll try that again. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Zyxel's Tech Talk. My name is Tri Nguyen. I'm one of the product managers here at Zyxel, and we like to discuss and have a time together, each week to talk about some technology and some of the topics that can help you as partners or as customers to using Zyxel solutions. So this week we're going to talk about some Ultra PoE, the 802.3 BT standard, and what kind of applications we can use and what products are related to those technologies. So good to have you here. Welcome everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A section. I like to use that as kind of a benchmark, and we can answer the questions in line. I want it to be interactive and a discussion between us if possible. Or if you want to, you can use the chat box as well. But I prefer the Q&A because it lists them kind of in a record format, so I don't get lost in case something happens with the chat. So let's go ahead and get moving. If you've been here before, we'd like to introduce who Zyxel is. You might see there's a new name in the middle there. It's Zyxel Networks. Zyxel now is, Zyxel Communications is now kind of partly split into two different avenues of the company. One is Zyxel Communications, which primarily focuses on our telco service provider business worldwide. And Zyxel Network is the arm of Zyxel that is related to all kind of the channel products, all the business class product line. So pretty much everything else, the home and the business. So we've been in business for about 30 years now. We have over 100 million devices that are powered up by Zyxel. We have 600 employees. So you may see that number is lower than what it used to be because of that split. So we have a lot of the manufacturing, the R&D, and the sales force that has gone to the Zyxel communication side of the business, while we are here in the Zyxel network side. 700,000 businesses use Zyxel products today, and serving over 150 global markets. We're internationally recognized, so as a customer, you have confidence in who Zyxel is as a manufacturer of hardware and software solutions for networking. We're recognized worldwide for that. And we are also solution driven. So we love to work with partners like yourself in order to get feedback from it, because we do have our R&D resources both in the US and also in Taiwan, where we work with and develop product features to fulfill your needs. So that's what we think it's really important for us to be able to work with you. We get direct feedback from the partners to do that. So definitely, if you have any kind of ideas, solutions, things that will help to make your job better or job easier, please let us know, because that's where we want to work with you to creating that ecosystem of products that really fulfill what you need in those solutions. So we offer a comprehensive portfolio end to end, from security all the way to the network management. So we have security appliances, wireless solutions, switching networking, which includes the PoE Plus that we'll talk about today, gateway access solutions with hotspot functionality, and the network management, both in the cloud and in standalone mode. So today we're going to be talking about a little bit about the gigabit part, right? So 10 gig and PoE Plus, they typically are going hand in hand right now. So I wanted to cover a couple things about the PoE itself. So PoE, you have to kind of understand all the naming conventions of it. So the switches, the switch network, we call them by the naming conventions. If it starts with the ES, it's an Ethernet switch, so it's only 10/100. Gigabit switches have a GS on it. XS switches are 10 gigabit, so those are the Roman numeral 10. And that also includes our multi-gig and multi-gig switches. XGS is a 10 gig uplink, but primarily all gigabit ports. And you don't have to worry about the MGS. Those are our Metro Ethernet switches, more focused on our telco side. And if it ends in a P or an HP, it's typically our PoE or PoE Plus. Now, just so you know as well, even in our PoE Plus, which is what we're talking about today, it has to deal with, it still will be named the HP. So there's no HPP or HPP Plus or anything like that. So just so you know from the naming convention standpoint. The switches may come also with combo ports. So I'm just trying to set the groundworks as we start talking about more of the solution later on. But when there's a combo port, the SFP ports and also the Ethernet ports, they're comboed together. So meaning that you have to have flexibility of using one of the ports, like one or the other, but you can switch between the two, but you cannot use both at the same time. So then we have some switches that have both the SFP plus and SFP modules, and those can convey to the SFP plus is more of our 10 gig solution with fiber, and SFP is our gigabit fiber solutions. And of course, you have to have the appropriate modules for those to work. Okay, so now that we have kind of the groundworks, I want to jump into that multi-gig, but really the PoE++ portion of it, the evolution of our switching network. So what is PoE? PoE is an 802.3 class standard. So it's a standard switching protocol that allows for you to deliver power to access points, IP cameras, voice or IP phones, but now some additional applications as well because of the increased power. Usually you have PoE, which is the 15.4 watt, that's called class 3, and that's an 802.3 AF standard. The PoE plus is what you're probably used to. It's what's being used now in probably the last 5 or 10 years or so, using the PoE plus class, which is the 30 watt standard. It's a class 4, 802.3 AT. And what we'll be talking about today, we'll focus on the PoE plus, and that's a class 6 PoE, which delivers up to 60 watts of power of, it's 802.3 BT, as I mentioned. And also it could be called ultra PoE. We don't use the ultra PoE name. We pretty much just call it either 802.3 BT or a PoE++. So just keep that in mind. But there are also some alternative names if you are looking to compare. Just make sure that we're comparing kind of apples to apples. There are some cool things that you can do with it, but you have to remember too, we have to have the proper cables too. So it uses Cat5e, so you have to have at least Cat5e to deliver not only the distance and throughput that you need, because typically these kind of switches will be multi-gig or better in terms of the application a lot of times. And there's really one major application that requires the multi-gig solution, but Cat5e, up to Cat6a to deliver the power up to 60 watts. But of course, because you have those more applications needing those kinds of speeds, you need a more appropriate probably gigabit solution. So it kind of goes hand in hand again with having to be going up to 10 gig or even multi-gig solutions while still delivering power as well. So the multi-gig lets you do the 1 gig, 5 gig, 10 gig solutions. But the applications that need more power have popped up is primarily Wi-Fi 6. And I'll talk a little bit about why Wi-Fi 6 kind of requires so much more power. But it's the new 802.11ax standard that you'll be facing while delivering to businesses, to different application solutions like hospitality and security and things like that. So pan-tilt zoom cameras that require maybe infrared with heating elements to keep it outdoors, and pan-tilt zoom, those are applications that are consuming more than the 30 watt standard. Now you have to remember too, even though it says it's a 30 watt standard, if you kind of look at the actual like power that's being delivered because of degraded in the line, and the expectation is that for a 30 watt PoE, it can really only send about, I think, 27 watts of power to the device. And even in a 60 watt standard, it's not the full 60, it's a slightly smaller number than 60. But in a lot of cases, like a pan-tilt zoom, now when you're starting to add like the heating elements and you're adding the pan-tilt zoom and it's requiring more power, it's going beyond the 27 watts. So you'll actually see that a lot of the devices that are out there, they're not really consuming much more than 30, but because it is more than 27, it's requiring that you have to use a BT type standard. So keep that in mind. There are, and I'll tell you some of the pitfalls that some of our customers have seen in this, and so it helps you kind of to realize what's going on. But it can also power laptop computers or even some sort of terminal computer, because now you'd have 60 watts worth of power that can power maybe a lower device. I mean, a lot of people's wattage powers, like even in their laptops, like the small laptops, are only like a 60 watt power supply. Access controls, it depends on those things. Nurse calling stations, information kiosks, anything like that that could be powered with more power, obviously. So the previous applications, you could still do wireless at 30 watt power, IP phones, still some cameras and things like that. But I think the evolution is that we've moved from things that did, lower end things like less traffic. It wasn't worried about that much power needs. It was just doing kind of simplified applications. Now moving up the ladder to like, hey, now that we can deliver more power, we can try to do more wide range applications that are out there. And there is a standard that's even higher than the 60 watt as well, but that's moving into kind of like industrial lighting and those kinds of applications where we aren't focused in at the moment. We're primarily focused on the small business kind of application in very specific needs of that regard. Now we do have specialized switches like in the IP surveillance side, which I will talk about as well. But what Zyxel does, because we're talking about power, we need to talk about how we deliver the power and how do we utilize our power budgets smartly, right, or intelligently. So we do intelligent PoE monitoring, so it can actually detect the power of the device that's being used and allocate what that device actually needs. We don't have to just put a classification in there and eat up a budget out, from what we have in the system. We can control each port. We can decide the priority of the ports as well on what gets what kind of power. And in case there's a overconsumption, we can maybe drop the power or turn off the PoE on certain devices to make room for more mission critical applications. Maybe there's certain pan-tilt zooms or whatever it is that you're trying to make sure that there's always power 100% of the time as long as the switch is alive, right? Also making sure that the power is efficient and also the ability to schedule it as well. So there are some applications with maybe access points or making sure that security cameras are always available and online. You can always make sure that power is being delivered, or for access points, you could turn them off during non-office hours so that there is no potential security hole or people utilizing the connection when they're not supposed to. But the consumption mode is really important because it's all about allocation. Just for example, here's an example of using a 15.4 watt standard, which is a class A, and using a switch. If you want to power up, let's say 24 phones, a lot of the other devices will allocate based on the classification, not on the draw. So if you wanted to power up 24 of these PoE devices, these phones, it would actually take 369 watts in order to do that. So it actually will, even though it can power it all up, it's utilizing a lot of the power in terms of the power budget. The actual consumption is 216 watts. So in this particular example, you don't see kind of, well, what's the benefit of it? The benefit is when you're using something that is using more power. So for example, in a pan-tilt zoom or an IP camera, that might be classification 4. So it's using 30 watts of power. In terms of its classification, in order to power up, let's say 20 of these devices, it would take up 600 watts of power in order to do that. We only have 375. In a lot of cases, a lot of competitors will only have that kind of power. And so you cannot power up more than 20 phones. But with Zyxel's intelligent PoE, it notices that the device actually only consumes 16 watts. So you can allocate 16 watts against the budget times 20, and that means you only have 320 watts required in order to power up those 20 phones or 20 IP cameras. And this applies the same for the access points. It doesn't matter what device it is. The switch itself can detect the draw and be able to pull that. So that also comes into play with 802.3BT. Like I mentioned before, a lot of these applications, a lot of the APs, even our APs, are only consuming around 31 watts, like max power. And so the thing is, when classification mode, it's gonna budget out all 60 watts. So really, you're gonna have like 28, 29 watts in the budget, like set aside for pretty much nothing. And so in order to get that all back using Zyxel's like intelligent PoE in the consumption mode, you're able to just put aside 31 watts, and therefore on your switch, even though it has a larger power supply, in that switch you can power up more devices. So I've come up with kind of a fun slogan, more power, power more kind of thing. So that's a just a way to say that we do have a lot of power in our switches, but also doing it intelligently so that you can actually power up more devices in the solution. So the solution gets used across a lot of applications. We have a lot of global successes in the education market. We have it in, applications in the smart classroom. If you're trying to deploy, again, APs with the switch network with gigabit, a lot of those networks, even though, you have mostly 10 gig or even the BT solution at the endpoint, a lot of the internal infrastructure are moving towards a 10 gig or multi-gig solution because they have so many other applications running on that network, right? You have your firewall, your solutions, you have your controllers for your access points. You have your actual data that's going on those access points that are feeding the tablets, the digital textbooks, or like, iPads and things like that. And also the infrastructure direct wired connectivity too. So if that's a gigabit network, then it could be causing, a lot of bottleneck and things like that. So everybody's moving towards a 10 gig infrastructure like this one in the classroom. Also in the hospitality as well, we have thousands of hotels that use Zyxel solutions, over 220,000 rooms that use Zyxel solutions for that in hospitality. And it's pretty much kind of the same application. It depends on what you're moving towards. You have in the hospitality IP surveillance cameras, IPTV that you're delivering, also get guest network access. And we already have a lot of customers that have been moving towards a Wi-Fi 6 kind of solution, or at least building that out as a project. Wayne asks a question: is wattage at startup considered? And do these use more power when starting? They do. When they first do, on some of the products, they do have a kind of a burst. So it depends on how you load it up. You actually can set up the switch to do kind of a sequencing. So it actually will power up in sequence. So it doesn't have to power up everything. So if you are kind of close to the budget, in terms of what you've set aside, it will go up to its max power. But based on like what our access point is, we look at the data sheet and look at what the max power draw is. So that includes the boot up. So the actual kind of normal throughput cycle, it is budgeted at probably a little bit less than the 31 watts that it says on the data sheet. But that's what you would have to consider. So you definitely have to kind of check out what is the max power draw, because a lot of times it will send the negotiated wattage and be able to figure out what is the actual draw. So even on the boot up, so if you're running it pretty tight, in terms of you're filling up as many as you can, you just might have to find that balance where maybe you might have to have one less switch than you would normally. But definitely check from the devices or from the manufacturer of maybe the IP cameras and things like that, and find out what its actual max draw is, even in on boot up, and then base it on that. But our switches actually has the ability to do that too. You can set kind of a priority boot up. So you can set up where half of the APs will boot up first, and then the other half will as well. Wayne asked, does the switch have a GUI that will let us know the total draw? Yes, absolutely. So in the dashboard, most of the switches that we have will give you the power consumption, even by port. So you can see the total draw on the PoE budget, plus the individual port draws. Yeah, so that's what you'll get to see. So it lets you control that as well. You can do, there's a lot of our managed switches actually give you very granular ways of how it boots up. So not only does it help you boot up devices that are standard, but also there's a lot of kind of non-standard PoE kind of devices that are out there, or maybe the boot sequence or the way that it negotiates the power is a little bit different. Typically though, we haven't had very much problems as long as you're using like a standard PoE product. Our products will detect that and it'll be fine. And there is another PoE standard that another vendor, which I shall not name, uses basically passive PoE. It's basically a standard of PoE where you're injecting power just onto some cables on that Ethernet, but it's not following a standard PoE. So it's using that kind of thing to deliver power. But what we are focused on is the standard PoE, because then we know that as a standard, our switches will work with anyone else that follows that standard as well. So that PoE is really important. I think that helps to make the applications more universal and then less having to deal with interoperabilities and stuff like that. But the hospitality is like that too. We're seeing more and more customers that are moving towards Wi-Fi 6. And the funny thing is we have customers already testing Wi-Fi 6 and they love it because it is, to them, it is, from a multi-user standpoint or a higher concentration, higher population density applications, it really helps to increase kind of overall throughput and performance, and of course, then end user, usability. But we found out that they actually used it in kind of a degraded mode, because they weren't using the full power on the PoE. And so the device, I'll tell you, it's probably one of the pitfalls that we've encountered that customers have found out. IP surveillance is another big application as well. Using our switches to be able to power up pan tilt zoom devices. We do have some specialty features within our IP surveillance switch line. If you're interested in those kind of products, you can reach out to us, or you can also check out one of our previous webinars on the IP surveillance switch group of products. But that offers delivery of, like high PoE power, even across long distances on cables and stuff like that. And of course, they're always usually connected back to a server or some recording. So you have applications that can then use 10 gig or using PoE BT power to power up some of those bigger cameras. So I did mention Wi-Fi 6. So Wi-Fi 6 solutions are out with Zyxel. We are also increasing our portfolio of them as well. But why is Wi-Fi 6, important? Well, Wi-Fi 6 delivers some great traffic. It offers up to 10 gigs worth of Wi-Fi. Theoretically, the theoretical number is that it has a top potential speed of 9.6 gigabits per second. But actual throughput will probably be less at that, but it'll be in the multi-gigs. And so right now, most networks are not built for Wi-Fi 6. They're only built for, gigabit networks. So they're not going to be able to utilize kind of the full capabilities of Wi-Fi 6. So in order to move to Wi-Fi 6, you have to now go through a cycle of changing out your infrastructure, or at least the endpoints that allow for it to power up these devices, not only power them up, but also deliver all of the bandwidth to your core network. It has a larger capacity, so therefore 4 times more capacity and performance. It operates both in the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz band, so it still operates in your normal thing. And like I mentioned before, it does though take up more power because it is doing all of that. So you can see the comparison from like 802.11n, 600 megabits, wave 2 got you 6.9 gigabits per second, and now 11.2ax gives you the 9.6. But not only that, but you can now connect, the multi-device, the multi-stream capabilities of it is what's really powerful. And because of that, we're doing more. We have more antennas. We have more, radios that are using up more power. And therefore, that's why the consumption on these access points are a lot higher. And therefore, it actually pushes the boundary of your typical 802.3 AT standard, the 30-watt standard. You may see Wi-Fi 6 devices out there in the market now, but you can tell when it's not in its peak performance kind of range, when obviously the price might be lower, and also they're only using the BT standard. So they're not using a 60-watt standard, meaning it doesn't use as much power. So therefore, ultimately, that it's either an antenna, its chipset is probably a lower grade that doesn't consume as much power, but probably doesn't have the performance as these kind of products have. So we have a range that's kind of all out coming out across this year. That's both on kind of the e-tail side, the lower end switch, access points, and then the VAR-based ones with management, Nebula Pro built-in or capabilities as well. And we'll talk about what Nebula Flex is. But really, you need the backbone, right? You need the switch network to be able to handle this kind of application. And I think this is the major application that most people, the reasoning why you are looking for PoE plus solutions and multi-gig solutions. So AX is really pushing that boundary of your existing network, needing speeds right now of 3.6 gigs of throughput. And so these access points are actually engaged with, or they come with 2.5 gig or multi-gig, 5 gig type connections on the WAN, on the uplink side, that you need both delivering power and connectivity. So you need a switch to kind of match up to that. You need to go to something like an XS1930 series. XS1930 is a web managed switch, and it supports the 802.3bt standard, which is that 60-watt standard. All of the ports on this 12-port switch can support that PoE plus. And it has on a 12-port switch, which is 8 and 9, 10. It's a 12-port switch, but actually sorry, I didn't mean all 12 was PoE. Excuse me. But the 10 ports will be able to provide you. So it can connect up to 8 access points on the 8 major ports. Sorry, the 8 ports are doing delivery of PoE. We have 2 uplinks that are multi-gig, and then 2 that are SFP modules. So that's why it's a 12-port switch. But there's 8 ports of actual 60-watt deliverable power on a 375-watt power supply. So that's what we're delivering. So it's a really high-end switch per se in terms of power budget per port. right? So we're making sure that you can power up 60-watt devices in this application. And the cool thing about PoE++ or Ultra PoE is that it's backwards compatible. So you can use this to mix and match. Instead of using injectors, you may have applications right now where you're having to buy separate injectors just for the 60-watt power for your pan tilt zoom. Now you can actually bring it all together into a single, switch to manage, right? You have less things to manage. And then you also have visibility, because now instead of an injector that has pretty much no visibility, you have full management capabilities and visibility into the switch like this, not only in standalone mode, but because it is Nebula Flex, it can go into the cloud as well. So you can have auto deployment, you can manage to turn on and off the ports, individual ports, and you don't have to reset the entire switch. You have a problem with the camera, a problem with an access point, you can just shut off the PoE power remotely, especially in this day and age, be able to do everything just remote, and then turn it back on, give it a reboot, or you can even schedule it to reboot. So maybe, in 3 a.m. at a hotel, half of the APs, you can do a quick reset on a flush. So it just flushes out any clients that might be there that are, they're not online, but it's just a kind of a clean reset. And then you can switch it to the other half of APs and do a reset on a schedule, right? So you can do all that kind of fun stuff while you have management capabilities. So this switch is, like I mentioned, a Nebula Flex. It's a smart managed switch. It's allowed for you to go both in the cloud and on standalone mode. It has a smart cooling fan, so it allows for it to be very quiet if you're going to deploy this in an office environment. It gives you multi-gig connectivity, and this is one of those few switches that are in the market that offer both not only the PoE, the high-end PoE power, but also multi-gig capabilities. So it does the 100 megabit, gigabit, 2.5 gigabit, 5 gigs, and 10 gig on all the copper ports. So it gives you that flexibility to do all those applications. The LEDs are really cool. I have it on the next page, but it delivers 8 ports of PoE plus on that 300 budget. And also then there's restore buttons. There's a LED indicator. So this is really what to help you when you're delivering PoE. We actually have a 5 LED indicator on our switches. So the colors for not only the PoE, but also for the megabits of connectivity, because it's doing 5 different stages. So you can see the LEDs on the RJ45 LEDs. You have the yellow, that's 100 megabits. You have the green, that's the 1 gig. 2.5 is in the blue. 5 gig is the red, and 10 gig is the darker blue. So we have that indicator that will show on top here what is what is being used in that port. And also we have a PoE indicator that can tell you, just from a visual standpoint, once you've loaded all these APs or devices in there, what the total draw power consumption is. So the indicator can go in every 20%, right? So when it hits the red, it's telling you that you're either at 80% or greater. So you should probably not or unplug something or be mindful of it. You can check the details though when you log into the GUI device itself. The PoE modes will also be indicating on what mode the device itself that you've plugged in is in. So again, as an installer, you can get that visibility without having to even log into the GUI. So it can actually show you that, hey, I plugged in this AP and it's powering up at either AF, AT, or BT standards on those LEDs. And it also has a cloud LED, so that if you are using this in a Nebula kind of standpoint, where you're doing it in the cloud, you can see when it's activated in the cloud, or when it's manageable in the cloud, that it's dialed home. So that allows for you as an installer to be able to deploy the equipment, see visually, talk to your maybe your NOC or the engineer that's actually doing the configuration in the cloud, that, hey, I can see it in the cloud right now, so go ahead and do your configuration. There's a restore to last custom default. This is really important feature that we've added. We've had requests for this for a long time, but this switch has that. A couple of our newer switches also have this restore button. As a partner, this is basically your last known good, or actually not last known good even. It is your what you deployed it, what you want the default to be, right? So you go out, you do your install, you do the configuration, and you're like, all your VLANs are in there, all the devices that you want have plugged in, how the ports are configured, the scheduling, whatever it is. You're like, this is the image that you want. You can actually copy within the device GUI the standing configuration, so the current configuration as a reset kind of the last custom default. So you put it into a memory slot that if anybody clicks on the kind of the restore button, so it allows for you to go in and do a quick fix, or for an end user to do a quick fix. So they can click on the restore button and it puts it back to that configuration setting that you originally had or had copied over to make that is the image. So allows for you to get back to what you knew was working when you first installed it. So some of the comparison of this particular switch with some of the other vendors that are out there. You have to look again, some of the price you'll see, the street price on Amazon that we plan, or at least the visible street price, is about for the 12 port, it's about $9.99. But you have to remember too that we're doing multi-gig on 8 ports. We're doing very high power PoE as well, doing hybrid mode with cloud capabilities and being able to support multi-gig across all the ports with even the uplink. So we have a lot more ports, we have a lot more power on a lot of these cases. All right, so this is what we need, especially for the PoE for the 60-watt power budget. That's what you need for Wi-Fi 6. So we're making sure that that's available. All right, so I did mention Nebula Flex. What Nebula Flex, if you're not familiar with this, is it's part of our Nebula Cloud solution. We offer a free Nebula Cloud management, which is one part of it, but we also allow for you to then switch it to a Nebula Pro, which adds on extra features and functionality for kind of a VAR from a network management kind of standpoint. You still have a lot of the network management in the free mode, and that's really to just compete against the ones that give you a free cloud now. But where you want to go is more of kind of the enterprise class solutions. That's where we have the Nebula Pro. But it's flexible in that it lets you choose whether you're in standalone mode with no cloud management. You can still do web management, so don't confuse that. You could still log into the GUI. You can still log into the CLI if it's there, if that product has it. But you have the option of moving it into a Nebula Cloud. So this is really a great platform. If you know your customers or even your business is not yet set for a kind of a managed service kind of offering, but you want to go to the cloud, or even for your standpoint, to be able to manage your customers and provision them easily in the cloud in one kind of single pane of glass, and manage multiple customers, multiple organizations, things like that in a single pane, then you definitely want to move to the cloud. So if that's in your in your mindset, this is a great solution for that. And we have over, I think, 40,000 devices now already in our Nebula platform, thanks to partners like yourself using Nebula. And so we're really proud of getting that and continue to grow that. It continues to grow. So I think people find the value in that and be able to have the flexibility of deploying into a customer, knowing that they can move to cloud as they need to, or maybe they're looking for a solution that is jumping right to the cloud, right? So in standalone management, you can use that in a normal kind of typical network application, or again, like you could do in the cloud, where you're using Nebula cloud hosting services and to manage different applications, like in the retail, the branch office, the campuses, or even remote office. Now, just kind of a word of advice, I think from this whole social distancing, being able to have to work from home, a lot of partners are like, how do I go and install stuff for customers, even in the home office or at the office, or some of these applications where you need to go and deploy, switches, access points, gateways. I think Nebula is kind of the perfect solution. It's made for that. In fact, you can actually, I haven't gotten into the real details of Nebula, but we have, webinars. If you've attended any of our Nebula webinars, we had one, I think, last week, I believe. And so if you want to check some of our old recordings, it also has the Nebula platform in there to talk about. But what really the power of Nebula is that you can literally take the access point, the switch, the gateway, you can scan the serial number, the MAC address of the device, put it into the Nebula cloud. So it enters it into the cloud for a particular customer that you're installing. You can send that kit with some basic instructions that says, plug your gateway device into your internet connection, right? So into your modem, plug the switch into that gateway, plug the access point into the switch, right? And you can just lay out very simple steps as like a self-install kit. And what happens is once you've done that, the gateway will automatically get DHCP. It will call back to the home, into the cloud, to Nebula, and it will provision itself based on what you've already pre-configured for the device in Nebula, or you'll see it come online and you can do the configuration right there. So it gives you that access to kind of do an installation and be able to do that from a remote environment. You don't even have to necessarily be at the location physically, right? So it's almost like you could literally go deliver to the door. They can go and take the package and do the install. You could literally configure it right in the driveway if you needed to, right? So that's kind of the ability that allows for you to do that. And so I think that is a great way for you to still be doing business to customers that you can't maybe physically reach. Now, this also adds to the application of where you can manage or maybe expand your coverage, right? Before in the past, maybe you were feeling like I had to stay within a driving range of customers. So you were within the state area, or in kind of more of the local area that you can drive within maybe a couple hours. That was kind of your reach. But now technically with Nebula, with this kind of application where it's auto provisioning and an install kit application, you can really fine tune it so that you can deploy a box to any customer that lives in any state per se. And your reach could go beyond there because you can do all the installation remotely, and the support, the management, everything like that. So that includes our BT switches. So those applications for that, you can use it. Now, of course, installing access points and things like that, you still have to go out and do those. So those primarily are not kind of, you can't really do remote access. But what you can do is, if you do have maybe a installer or a third-party installer, right, or a contractor that you're using, even in different states, you can actually contract them to go do this install, because really they just need to be able to run a cable, connect it to an access point where it should be mounted, right? So if that's already determined, then you can have them do the actual install. They do not need to be a network admin. They don't need to be a network engineer. As long as they know how to get power to the device, and the Ethernet is taking them to an internet connection that goes out to the cloud or goes out to the WAN, then those access points, those devices will call home. And once they call home, you have access to them. So really, it's kind of mind-blowing, the fact that you can have reach beyond what you expect to be able to do physically. Now, our design is always focused on high quality. So our hardware is designed really well. That's why we can offer a lifetime warranty on it. We have thermal designs that support higher temperatures. We use smart fans, so the fans don't just run out because we're running them at full speed, but it also cuts away on the noise as well. And also we have a noise filter on the power to make sure that we have clean power going throughout the system. So power fluctuations and things like that. We use solid state capacitors that have longer lifetime. So that means more stability, more robustness in the device. So you're paying, you're paying kind of, not really paying for, you're getting a premium and not typically having to pay much more at all, or if not even at all. So a lot of times, a lot of the Zyxel products are much more cost effective than some of the competitors that are out there now, yet you're getting a better quality. And that's what we feel, that we need to deliver a product that is reliable and that can be trustworthy, right? So that our name could be that, hey, you guys make some great products, some great switches and solutions that are out there. So again, like I mentioned before, smart fan, so you can use it in kind of in an office environment if you need to. And a little bit about our program. If you are not yet a partner with Zyxel, I encourage you to take that step. You can call our our sales team, and or even talk to myself. I can help you point to that. But we have 3 tiers. We have a bronze, a silver, and gold. Those also include discounts at distribution, except for bronze. When you sign up, if you're a new partner, you start at the silver pricing, and you have to maintain that by doing about $6K per half year. So $1K a month is all we ask for you to do to maintain your silver. I don't have it posted here because we are streaming to Facebook and all that, but contact our sales team on what those margins are so you can take advantage of it. But of course, you want to move to the gold tier, which is about 2K per month. So if you're doing any kind of 2K per month, that's like 1 project a month in your, in kind of the networking space, that will get you automatically to the gold tier. So I've been really successful in getting a lot of our partners moving to the gold tier. So it's not very high. There's no other requirements and things like that, but it gives you access to all the deal registrations, webinars, the tech support. You get financing access, For all the tiers, you get a direct account manager. So you have your regional managers that will be able to contact and call upon you. In the higher tiers, you get access to NFRs, lead referrals, access to our sales engineer, advanced replacement, and things like that. So definitely you can use our major distributors that we use: D&H, Ingram, Synex, Wave, Target Distribution, and a lot of you partners have already been doing that already. So thank you again for your partnership. For now, we can move to our Q&A section. If there are any other questions, again, please use the Q&A section to ask those. If there are other questions that you want to ask, or maybe later on you come up with, feel free to contact me. My email is right here. It's tri@zyxel.com. And so feel free to reach out to me. I can point you in that direction if I can't answer it. Again, we look forward to helping you in any way, and any of the product solutions that you're looking for. Now, I know there's probably a question like, how are you going to expand the BT portfolio? Because I just talked about literally just one of our switches. That's our first major launch. Of course, the BT standard is going to become the standard. It's just a matter of time, and it's a matter of cost effectiveness, right? Until there is more applications that require, a bigger, port counts, concentration of them, you'll expect to see multi-gig 24 port, BT switches, and those will have like, 1,000 watt plus of PoE or whatever it is. So again, it's a matter of scale and pricing too, because if you want to move to the standards, the Wi-Fi 6 and adopt for that, you have to do it kind of slowly, because the expense of moving to that is also high. So it's kind of similar to like the AC, but now it's kind of a double whammy. With AC, when we moved to 11 AC, the only price that you had to kind of absorb was the higher prices of the 11 AC access points. But your typical switch network would still function, because you've already had 802.3 AT standard with 30 watts deployed, and all of the AC access points could use that perfectly fine. You didn't have to change out your infrastructure network. Now with AX and Wi-Fi 6, you not only have to change out the APs, but you also have to change out to make sure you have enough power. So you have to move up to the BT standard, and you have to go to multi-gig as well. So you're kind of going to a double jump in terms of technology. Now, I did mention that one of the pitfalls, and I forgot to mention that earlier with the Wi-Fi 6, we had a customer who tested our Wi-Fi 6 access points and came back and said, "This is great, this is fantastic." And then we asked him, "Well, you have that AP, what did you use to test it? Because we haven't given you any other, BT switches." And he's like, "Oh, we just loaded it up with the, our this particular switch." And we realized that they were using the 30 watt standard, which was enough to power it, but not enough to give its full power. So our products actually have kind of like a degraded mode. So when there's not enough power, rather than just not working, it actually goes into more of like an AC standard, right? So it instead of going to the Wi-Fi 6, it came back down to the Wi-Fi 5, kind of standard with 11 AC. So he was using it in a degraded mode, yet was still getting much better performance than he was expecting. So that was kind of the funny thing, because people don't realize what's going on. You can't see Wi-Fi per se. And even though in that degraded mode, it was still outperforming a lot of the things that they were testing. So we told them that here's the switch, here's the BT switch for you to test it again, tell us what it looks. So I'm hopeful, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to perform even better than what he is expecting. Richard asks, "Is the slides available?" Yes, I will ask our marketing team to, I would give this to the team so they can make a PDF out of it and make it available, as well as the recording, in case you want to watch it again. All right, at this time, I don't think there's any other questions right now. Again, so if you have any questions that come up, that you could reach out to me, tri@zyxel.com, or you can reach out to your sales rep if you know that. Jacob is primarily handles the West Coast region, the Western region, and East region is handled by Ivan. So, just reach out to us. We'll get to you. And if you have solutions that you're wanting us to kind of help you build out, especially if it's like Wi-Fi type solutions where you want to put access points, or what's your recommended for access points, switches, gateways, again, reach out to us. We're here to help you to closing those kinds of businesses. And thank you, Wayne. Thank you for those comments. Yeah, I mean, I love having these sessions with you. It's a little bit more I guess, informal in a sense. I mean, it's set. It's not formal, but it's not informal either. But it allows. I like the fact that it can interact with you. I mean, that's my hope, is that you find trust in myself and in Zyxel to ask the questions that you need to ask, and realize that, hey, we're here to help you, you know, and grow with you. So we're here to help as best as we can. So thank you so much. So if there are no any other questions, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and continue using Zyxel. So thank you for being an ally of Zyxel. We'll see you next time. Hopefully we can get our new shirts made some point with Zyxel Networks. So I'm looking forward to that. But now that we're all isolated, the only benefit one great benefit that I have is that my kids will bring me my coffee every morning. So I really don't even have to ask for coffee. And so they'll actually bring it to me now. So they just know to bring it. So that's one benefit. But I hope you guys are staying safe, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you for choosing Zyxel.